What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Libby Studio. Today I'm going to be talking about part 2 of season 6 of Cobra Kai. And oh my gosh, this was a great part. These 5 episodes were really good. I loved them in so many ways. I'm going to be diving in, getting into all the nitty-gritty and everything, so there will be spoilers ahead, obviously, which you should know by now. I'm not doing no spoiler reviews. I think those are so boring. I just want to dive deep and talk about it and all that jazz. So this is your warning. If you have not watched part 2, watch it now. Basically, my overall thoughts, I thought these were really good. Kind of going into this, I was thinking, how are they going to do a tournament for 5 episodes? In the past, we've only gotten 2-episode tournaments at most. So going into it, I thought it made a lot of sense. I mean, really, they didn't even start fighting until the end of the first episode. And then the third episode, they didn't even fight at all. So really, they were only fighting for 3 episodes. So, I mean, it didn't feel like too long. In fact, I felt like the tournament was just the right amount, not too much. And I feel like my expectations were met with the tournament, because the tournament itself was my favorite part of the whole thing. My only issues were some of the character conflicts, which I'll get into later on. But I really like the new characters they introduced, especially Axel. He's very interesting. Zara, I don't like, really. I mean, she's kind of entertaining, but I had issues with her character throughout, and she's just really annoying. I think Sensei Wolf is cool. He's like the Diet Coke version of Johnny, so I think he's going to be interesting. But I assume they're going to continue these characters into part 3. They wouldn't have introduced them if they weren't going to do that. Because that would be kind of pointless, because they spent so much time on these characters just to have them be gone. So I feel like they have to be in part 3. But let's just jump right in. So episode 6 picks up right where episode 5 left off. The Miyagi-Dos find out Tori has joined Cobra Kai, and this shakens all of Miyagi-Do. Then there's also immediate conflict between the two dojos, mostly led by Quan. Him and Robbie do a kick fight, which I think was stupid, but kind of filler. It was mostly setting up the rivalry between the two. Kind of surprised. I mean, and I get why they did this, but at the start there was more of a rivalry between Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do, but as it went on, it kind of got less so, because they introduced the Iron Dragon so much. So I thought that was interesting, that they kind of had the Cobra Kai Miyagi-Do rivalry soften a bit during these episodes. I think part of it had to do with just how big of a role the Iron Dragons had, but also because they focused a lot on the adults too, and less on the kids, especially later on. Now, this part, I would say, was more kids focused, which I didn't mind. I mean, they were the ones fighting in the tournament after all. But basically, Robbie's trying to talk to Tori about this, but she's very closed off. Hawk and Dimitri are still fighting, and they're just being super annoying throughout all of this. I was not a big fan of their arc. In fact, that was one of my complaints about this. And then we also still have Johnny and Daniel arguing, and it's just so stupid at this point. One of my issues with part 1 was just the constant arguing between them, and they could just not agree for one episode. It was just very frustrating. So I'm not a fan of that. And it's just about the most stupid things too. Johnny blames Daniel for what Tori did, and it's not Daniel's fault at all. It was Tori at the end of the day. And sure, they probably should have done more to help her, but we found out that apparently no one helped her. She just isolated herself, and that's kind of weird to me. I feel like they would have done more to help her, especially because Sam and Robbie said they would have helped her, but they didn't know what she was doing at all. Did she just disappear off the planet? Is that supposed to be what we assume? Because it just seemed kind of odd. We don't know how much time has passed, though, between the captain's matches and the tournament, and I guess I kind of wish we had an answer there to fill in the gaps. But Tori tells Robbie they need to take a pause. So, it's kind of that whole we're on a break thing, so we're not allowed to do anything with other people. And of course, this comes back to bite them later on in this part. I think it made sense. I understood the intent behind it, but I just think it was kind of a bit of stupid team drama. And again, I wish... I was never a fan of Tori defecting to Cobra Kai, and it still doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I get she likes Kreese enough, but Kim Da-eun treated her horribly, And Tori even says, I'm not here for the team. To me, it just seems like Kreese got into her head just enough for her to believe that the Miyagi-Dos wouldn't care about her, which is just weird because they did. So I feel like Tori's grown so much since then, so to have her fall back into Kreese's like mind trap is a bit exhausting at this point, and if anything, it's character regression. So I am kind of upset about that. And even by the end of part 2, I feel like she really hasn't even gotten out of that mindset. I mean, I guess she started to by the end, but I feel like not enough. And Robbie also really frustrated me. At first, I felt bad for him because I feel like the team was kind of being hard on him with saying it's kind of like his fault for what Tori did when it really wasn't. Tori did that all on her own. So, but then as time went on, I understood why they were mad at him because Robbie started being very distracted about the whole thing, to say the least, and very annoying too. I got frustrated with it because they kept dragging it out and out and out. But again, I think I was frustrated with some of the character choices in this part. But I like the tournament itself. I like the fights. I like the overall conflicts between the dojos. I just think it was some of the specifics is where I had my troubles with it. We also have Chosen coming back, and apparently Kumiko has another guy. I feel like that's might be explained in part 3 as a misunderstanding. Now, I don't know if Kumiko will come back, especially now with him and Kim Da-eun, spoiler alert. I don't know about that. And then basically the ending is this fight, 4-way fight between Cobra Kai, Miyagi-Do, Iron Dragons, and this other dojo. And Cobra Kai defeats Miyagi-Do because Robbie's distracted, and then the Iron Dragons come in and they beat the Cobra Kaiers. So that's kind of how it ends, kind of establishing the Iron Dragons as a threat, which leads right into episode 7, where we have basically Miyagi-Do's just getting their asses kicked, and then Daniel is going off to meet with this Master Sereno, who apparently was a champion back in Miyagi's day and knows some answers about the headband, the bloody headband, because that's also a mystery weaving throughout. This leads to Daniel getting kidnapped, and this was kind of crazy, but I mean, not super unrealistic. I mean, we've seen so many kidnapping plots in TV shows, so I didn't even really care. And while this is all happening, Johnny is leading the kids at the tournament, and it's just clear his style is not working. He's being overly aggressive, just no nonsense, and annoying too. Like, Johnny really annoyed me these first 2 episodes, and even some in episode 8, just very frustrating. And especially, I felt like like Tori, he kind of regressed as a character too in part 1 and some of this too. I just feel like we're past the point of, oh, my style's better, my way's better, you're too focused on a dead man. It's just upsetting to see him still insulting Daniel like this. Like, I really thought he had grown. Like, you got a baby on the way, dude. Like, it's time to stop acting like a child. And Sam tells him, like, you're acting like you're not at fault for any of this. And I like that moment too, Sam defending her dad. And then this also leads to conflict between Sam and Devin. And Devin ends up telling Johnny what she did. She confessed about the laxatives with Kenny and everything, and that was a great moment. And I liked how Johnny wasn't super upset, and he told her to come clean. So I like that, and I like Devin in these episodes. She wasn't super annoying, not as annoying as she was in part 1, so I was thankful for that. But we get this whole locker room scene. Again, Sam and Devin tension, Hawk and Dimitri tension, Robbie and Miguel tension. Miguel tells Robbie, you had the opportunity of a lifetime to be captain and you're blowing it. Robbie says, I won it fair and square. Miguel says, you should accept him fighting better than you and hand the headband over. And then we get this platform fight where everyone pretty much does terribly. They all get knocked off the platform except Miguel. Dimitri accidentally kicks Hawk off the platform. That was funny. And Miguel does a 2v1, and that was an impressive fight. I like that. I think the platform fights were like an underrated fight location, so I did like that. And, you know, by the end, I think Robbie kind of realizes maybe this is not the right fit for me. And finally he does come around, but it was very frustrating how he kept looking at Tori. Like, dude, I understand you're upset, but maybe Tori should just move so like she's not in your sight. Like, she's always in your sight. And you have to lead. Like, this is like high stakes and you're letting your team down. So I did understand where Miguel was coming from. Again, at first I think they were kind of being unfair to him, but at this point he just has to get over it. And Miguel said that too. So yeah, I like this episode because of all the tension between the Miyagi-Dos and how they're not keeping it in anymore. And that's why I like that locker room scene so much. And I actually like both of the locker room scenes. This one and the one in episode 9. They were both really good. So, and then Daniel fights off against this guy with a Cobra Kai tattoo, who I didn't even recognize at first was Dennis until they revealed it later on. So Daniel immediately thinks Kreese was behind the kidnapping, which is a fair assumption. And then so he almost fights Kreese at the hotel, but Sam stops him. Then Johnny gets a call from Rosa and finds out Carmen has a problem with her pregnancy and she's in the hospital. So now him and Miguel are flying back to the valley. This was super shocking to me. So pretty much Daniel back, Johnny gone. The funny thing is not all three senseis are there until episode 9. That's kind of crazy that one of them was gone for the entire time up until then. Of course, most of the action didn't even happen until episode 9, being honest. But again, this was a good episode. It leads right into episode 8, which this was basically just a season 2, episode 8. It's all relationship drama. The main plot is Johnny and Miguel. They're flying back to the valley. They're on this plane. There's this guy in first class who's bothering Johnny. Miguel's upset at Johnny because he's been disregarding him the entire tournament. By the end, Johnny tells Miguel, "You're like a son to me too, and I'm scared about your mom, and I love her, and I love you." I like the Johnny and Miguel moments a lot, and I do miss them. So I that's why I like this episode so much, because that part of it felt like classic Cobra Kai to me. Now, at the end, when they teased us with the bloody sheets, that was too much. Like, come on, they could have just had her not be in her room. The bloody sheets were, like, a bit too dark of a tease. Like, I was like, we did not need that. But Carmen's fine, the baby's fine, she tells them to go back to Spain. So it's like kind of like all that for nothing, but it did provide us some good Johnny and Miguel moments, so I do appreciate that. Back in Barcelona, the kids are all out having fun at this bar. I guess there's no rules about drinking. I mean, literally almost all of them are drinking, except Sam, I think. So, and of course, the Cobra Kai people and the Miyagi-Do people and Zara are all at the bar. Of course, just inciting this conflict. We also have this fun subplot with Chosen and Kim Da-eun out searching for the kids. They end up teaming up to find them, to get answers out of these people. And then they end up making out and hooking up on the beach. I was not expecting this, guys, but I was actually living for it. They made such a fun duo, and honestly, I kind of shipped them. I like how we saw a different side of Kim. We've from so far we've only seen her as like a one-note character. So the fact that we finally saw her be something more was pretty refreshing, and I liked it. So I did like their subplot. It was fun, and I liked how it kind of continued into the next couple of episodes too. We also have Sam meeting this boy named Axel on the beach. Axel is the captain, male captain of the Iron Dragons, and his Sensei Wolf abuses him. I wish they kind of did more with that, but maybe they're saving more. I think they're saving more of the Iron Dragons for part 3, I hope, because I think there's so much left to explore there. The biggest one being Sensei Wolf and Axel's whole thing. Like, I think that needs to be addressed, because that's not okay. The fact that he abuses Axel, so I hope that doesn't go unaddressed by the end of the show, because I really like Axel. He's kind of socially awkward, but I think that makes sense. I think because of how aggressive he's had to be to put on this image, his emotions are kind of behind. So I do think he's a very interesting character. I was like, it's kind of predictable that they had him have a crush on Sam, but I'm not even upset about it. I mean, I'm just glad Sam didn't cheat again. That would have been frustrating and really annoying. But I liked how they fought off against Quan. That was fun. An unlikely team up. So I like their scene. I wish we saw more of them just being friends before things turn romantic. But I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to set up a love triangle for, I guess, more of that in part 3. So we'll see. Back in the valley, Amanda goes to talk to Kenny because now that Miguel's out of the tournament, they need another person. So she asks Kenny to rejoin, and Kenny's not having it. He's upset with Anthony still. He thinks he's the one who made him shit himself. So Amanda forces Anthony to apologize to Kenny. Then Kenny and Anthony fight. Amanda tells them there's more important things than their beef because Miguel's mom's in the hospital. So then they put aside their beef, and then Devin calls Kenny and confesses about the laxatives, and so they kind of tie it all up in a neat little bow, and I'm glad they did that because I didn't really want to spend much time on the kids' storyline, like the little kids. It just didn't. I feel like it was time for it to be resolved, so I'm glad they resolved it decently. I'm glad Anthony showed some growth. I'm glad Kenny showed some growth. Amanda's still not my favorite. I mean, she's okay, but I don't know. She just kind of comes off a bit pushy. But, I mean, that's minor. I like how Kenny at the end got to the point where he could go to Barcelona. So I did like that about that. Back at the bar, Hawk and Dimitri see this cute girl. Dimitri's like, we can't do anything because we both have girlfriends. The girl comes over and Dimitri goes off and dances with her. Then Hawk calls Moon and accidentally shows her that Dimitri's dancing with another girl. And of course, the teen drama trope, Yasmin is there with her. And Yasmin immediately dumps Dimitri, and Dimitri's upset with Hawk. Dimitri really pissed me off in part 2. I hated him. He was just so infuriating. But basically, the other part of this is Robbie sees Quan flirting with Tori, and then he thinks that they're hooking up, and then Zara comes and basically, I guess, assaults him. They did not address this, but to me it seemed like the fact that Robbie didn't remember anything and they were kissing the next day, that she raped him. And maybe that wasn't it, but I'm pretty sure everyone thought that's what it was, and the fact that they didn't address it at all was kind of really freaking weird. So that was probably one of my biggest issue in this whole part, was that little thing. Because I get why they did it, because they wanted to, one, amp up the rivalry between Zara and Tori, but also divide Robbie and Tori. So I get it, but I felt like, why have it be Robbie got drunk and doesn't remember anything? I don't know. That would just rub me the wrong way, and the fact that they didn't even address it at all later on. Now, maybe they will in part 3, but I doubt it at this point. I don't think so. And especially, we're assuming Tori and Quan did not hook up at all. And then the final twist is Chosen and Kim Da-eun. They see the guy with the Cobra Kai tattoo who's Dennis, so they follow him. Daniel and Kreese come with them, and they find out that the Dennis is with Sensei Wolf and Terry Silver. Love that cliffhanger. I knew he was going to be back, but I did not know exactly how he fit into the storyline, and I liked that. I liked this. I think it made sense. Perfect segue into episode 9, where we start off with this flashback where Silver talks to Sensei Wolf and offers pretty much to fund him and get him out of his debts if he gets the dojo to compete in the Sekai Taikai. Basically, Silver wants to be in that because that was like his dream come true, to be the #1 dojo worldwide. So he's just using the Iron Dragons as his proxy to do that, but also fund Sensei Wolf. So, I mean, that was a pretty good intro to all of this. Kreese just wants to go and kill Silver. Kim tells him no, they need to focus on the tournament. This obviously upsets the Miyagi-Dos, for obvious reasons. They are upset that now they have both Kreese and Silver, and really even the Iron Dragon is a threat too. It's just a lot. So they also have Kenny coming back, and Dimitri thinks he's a traitor. Kenny and Devin make up. This sets up the whole tournament things. The tournaments this time are like a circle fight where you just pretty much, once you're done fighting or you need a break, you tag another team member in, and then they fight. And then they all fight until your captain, or not your captain, until until your captain goes down, basically. That's basically it. I like this fight. I thought it was fun, something different. And I like that they did more team fights too, because we've never seen team fights until this tournament. So I like that they did a lot of like 2v2s, and then even full dojo versus full dojo, or and I like that. So I like that addition to the whole thing. So Hawk and Dimitri don't trust Kenny, so they're not willing to switch him out for anything or let him fight. This really frustrates Kenny. Silver approaches him and says, "You can compete for the Iron Dragons." Of course, Hawk sees this and he thinks Kenny's in cahoots with Silver. And then we have Daniel, Johnny, and Chosen taking Kreese's knife and making it seem like Silver took it, which causes Kreese to punch Silver. So they're basically just trying to get Kreese and Silver to hate each other more, to kind of isolate themselves from the whole equation, which I mean is pretty smart. Kind of shocking it was Daniel's idea, but I like how it's kind of like finding balance in between it, and it's just like a harmless thing. I mean, sure, it upset Kreese, but Kreese was going to blow anyways, so I think this was kind of harmless in the grand scheme of things. We get this scene in the locker room where basically everyone unites and they say, "We're Miyagi-Do, we're going to win this." Robbie steps up. It's a great moment. I love this locker room scene. So they go out there. They attack Kenny in. He flips Silver off. That was a really underrated moment. And seeing Kenny fight was so good. Like, he's such a good fighter, and he's so underrated too. So I love that whole sequence of him fighting and getting the win for them. And then we have Robbie versus Tori. They fight. Tori's upset about him and Zara. So we have a bit of a Sam and Tori scuffle. And then we have Robbie and Quan fight, and Robbie beats him. So that was great. And I kind of almost wish this is how the thing ended, with Robbie beating Quan, and that was it. Because I felt like some of episode 10 was frustrating to me, because I feel like they backtracked some stuff. Like, by the end of episode 9, Daniel and Johnny were finally on the same page. And then episode 10, they had them arguing again. So that was kind of frustrating. Like, I didn't feel like that was necessary to the whole thing. But the big twist at the end of episode 9 is Silver handing Daniel papers. And we find out, apparently, Miyagi killed his opponent in the Saikai Taikai, which feeds right into episode 10. We have Daniel having a nightmare, and basically he's Miyagi's opponent getting killed. And Daniel confirms with the managers or whatever, and finds out Miyagi did in fact kill his opponent. So this kind of sends him for a loop. Daniel and Chosen tell him, "You need to focus on the tournament." Daniel and Johnny have this whole freaking argument, and it's again, I hate their fighting. It's just so stupid. And I was even fine with how the conclusion they got in episode 9. So just to have them fight, like, argue again in this episode was just very frustrating. And the fact that they almost, again, so, like, this was another issue. Like, my biggest one was the Zara and Robbie thing. The second one was just the exhaustingness of Daniel and Johnny. It's just so, oh my gosh. This was kind of like, again, some stuff happens in these that are like, oh, that's convenient. This is one of those. Apparently, this other dojo gets banned for using drugs, which means Cobra Kai gets back in. So now it's going to be Sam versus Tori, and then Robbie versus Axel. And Axel's still upset that Sam rejected him. He's giving Miguel these evil stares. Again, I think this is setting up for part 3 for more of a Miguel, Axel, Sam love triangle. I think that's the whole point, because it is kind of odd, this whole thing. Axel's being kind of creepy, but I really think there's more to his character, and I think they're not developing him a whole lot. So again, I think part 3 is where he's really gonna get more of a focus. I think him and Miguel are gonna have a huge rivalry, kind of like Robbie and Quan, but not really. Tori asks Kim Da-eun, is it worth it to kind of give up yourself and give up everything to win? And Kim Da-eun says it is, which is interesting for her character. So is she willing to give up Chosen for Cobra Kai? To me, they kind of made that question that I think part 3 might delve into that more, especially if their relationship becomes a bigger thing. Kreese tells Tori, again, I think that I had a struggle with this too, just the continuous Kreese manipulating Tori, feeding this stuff to her. It's just exhausting at this point. Like, I feel like we should be over this. And I just was never a fan of Tori rejoining Cobra Kai, and this episode proved me why. It's just so frustrating and exhausting. I liked the montage. First of all, I liked Miguel setting it straight with Daniel and Johnny about their feud, but I also liked the training montages with Robbie and Sam and Johnny and Daniel all over Barcelona. Those were all really cool, great shots, loved all of that. So we get to the tournament itself, and we have Sam versus Tori and Robbie versus Axel. Robbie versus Axel first, and basically Axel is completely destroying Robbie until Quan gets involved, and then Miguel gets involved, and guess what? We got a whole brawl, people. We got this 15-minute long brawl that was freaking crazy. So many different fights going on. The biggest ones are Miguel versus Axel, Robbie and Quan, Tori versus Zara, Johnny versus Sensei Wolf, Daniel versus Dennis, Kreese versus Silver, of course. I'll talk about that for a second. Kreese is he's been planning to kill Silver this whole time with the knife, but he accidentally drops the knife, which means he has to use his bare hands, and of course Silver is much stronger than him, so Silver is about to kill Kreese till Johnny comes in to protect him, and then Johnny takes Silver down pretty quickly. I felt like I wanted more from Silver in part 2. I mean, I liked what we got of him, but I feel like we're going to get another Kreese versus Silver fight in part 3. We have to, right? That wasn't enough. We need a whole fight to the death where one of them dies. That's what I'm hoping for in part 3. I want to see one of them go down, and I think it's going to be Kreese, but they could do a plot twist because, Kreese is very central to Johnny and Tori too, but especially Johnny. So maybe having it be Silver would be more of the unlikely choice. But we'll see. It could easily be Kreese. I just think it's like obvious that they would kill him because it would wrap up Johnny's arc. I don't know. But we'll see. I wanted more of the Kreese versus Silver. I mean, I liked what we got, but it was very little. This whole thing leads to Quan finding the knife that Kreese dropped. He's going to kill Axel. And somehow he stabs himself. Like Axel trips him and then Quan falls on the knife. That was kind of stupid. I'm like, I guess he landed and he was holding the knife upright and he just happened to land and it went through the middle of his chest. It was just kind of like odd. Like, I don't know. But it was shocking. I was not expecting him to die. So that was our death. And I felt like especially the first episode, felt like they were really setting up Quan to be this big bad and this big rival. But I felt like they focused more on Axel and Zara and less on Quan. So the fact that when Quan died, it felt like, oh, I wanted more of him. So that was kind of a bummer, but it was still like a shocker. I actually thought for a second Silver was going to die, and Kreese was going to kill him. So I was kind of surprised that they had it be Quan. think it was kind of stupid the way he died. Like, he fell on the knife that he had in his hand because of getting tripped. Or I have to watch again. Did he get tripped, or did Axel just push him away and like? Because I'm pretty sure Quan was in the air too. Like, why did he jump? I don't know. The whole thing was just weird to me, and I feel like they could have like choreographed it a bit better. And I'm not saying Axel had to stab him, because I think that would have been dark for him, because I think Axel's a good guy. But I don't know. The whole death thing was kind of weird, but I do think it's a great setup for part 3. I'm not going to be talking about my part 3 theories. I'll do that closer to the actual show. But basically that's my thoughts on part 2. Again, my main issues, my biggest things were the Zara and Robbie thing, the Hawk and Dimitri stuff, most specifically Dimitri, and then the Daniel and Johnny arguing. Those were my top 3 things that really pissed me off throughout this part. Everything else was really good. I mean, I also didn't like Robbie being distracted and Tori's whole Cobra Kai thing, but even those had at least some interesting stuff about them. So, but overall, part 2 is really good. So I'm looking forward to part 3. Comment down below what you liked about part 2, what you didn't like, and what you're looking forward to part 3. So I'll see you guys then. Thanks everyone for listening. Strike first, strike hard, no mercy. Bye everyone.